Greetings, colleagues, members, and friends of the Chinese Language Division of the American Translators Association. Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to another great episode of our division's podcast. Before anything else, I have something quite exciting to share with you, and that is our division's podcast now has a name. The name is Yi Sheng, 翻译的译，声音的声. It means the voice of interpreters and translators. Isn't this a cool name? Because not only it captures the essence of our podcast program in form and in substance, but also it corresponds to our division's sister program, 译风, the letter or the words of interpreters and translators. 一风一声，风生水起. I love it. Okay, speaking of the interpreters and translators' voice and words, we owe it to ourselves and our profession to be an active advocate, because the nature of our work, ironically, renders us invisible, especially when we do a good job. In fact, the better of a job we do, the more invisible we become to the public. Why? Because we do our jobs so well, and that the intercultural and interlinguistic communications we help bridge become so seamless that people don't even realize that we were there. Although this can be the highest form of compliment we, as linguists, interpreters, and translators, receive, it can come at the cost of the public's recognition of the importance of the work we do. And unfortunately, because of that, in today's AI boom, when translation and interpreting consumers try to decide between AI translation versus human linguists, the value of the service we bring has simply been reduced to be represented by the dollar sign. Okay, that sets the stage for the topic we're going to talk about today, which is the Assembly Bill 292. AB 292 and its companion bill SB 295 were introduced on May 30th, 2025. These bills aim to allow Wisconsin courts to use artificial intelligence or other machine-assisted translation tools in lieu of or in conjunction with human interpreters in civil, criminal, municipal, and administrative contested case proceedings. The bills also seek to permit interpreters to provide services by telephone or live audiovisual means in criminal trials, where currently in-person interpretation is required. To dive deeper into this topic, I can't think of anyone more fitting than, drumroll please, Christina Green. She is the administrator of the Interpreters Division of ATA. She is also on the ATA Board of Directors. Based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Christina has been running her language service company, Green Linguistics LLC, since 2003. Not only Christina is a very experienced interpreter working in English, Spanish, Italian, and French, but also she has been very active in advocating for the TNI profession. She has been working tirelessly in fighting the Assembly Bill 292 introduced in her home state. And what a great opportunity do we have today to hear the first-hand information as to what gave rise to this bill and where it is now, as well as where it is possibly headed. Hello, Christina. Thank you for making it to the podcast.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all. And I think it's very timely. This is an important conversation that we must have with all the members of all 50 states, because what is happening in Wisconsin may trigger what is going to happen in other states.
Absolutely. Can you first tell us about how this bill even came about? Why court interpreters? Why now?
This happened at a time when we had the change in administration. I'm talking about president, right?
Uh-huh.
So when that change in administration came, some people who were actually very annoyed with the fact that they have to use and pay for interpreters when they believe the language is the language, it's everybody should speak English, etc.
Oh.
They have started pushing for other solutions. So one county in particular started this idea of working with some legislators to create a bill in order to replace interpreters with artificial intelligence.
Mm.
The main goal for doing that was, according to them, saving money. The president in March signed an executive order saying that English was the official language. That really hasn't changed much the things, because you still have Title VI, you still have parents who need to make informed decisions at the school level, you still have patients who need to make an informed decisions and understand, what they are going to be treated for. You still need an interpreter in a courtroom because the person has the right to defend themselves. Things have changed because some people have found themselves being emboldened and have implemented things that are not really kosher, I have to say.
As in some people being emboldened by the executive order by introducing these bills in the state of Wisconsin?
Correct. So what happened? As soon as this bill was introduced, a lot of people started calling and complaining. Mainly the people for American Sign Language, they were the ones who led the conversation. So what is the difference between oral languages and people, who sign?
Yeah.
The difference is that American Sign Language is protected under the American with Disabilities Act.
Correct. Yeah.
Oral languages is not.
Mm-hmm.
Is under, there's a mention under Title VI, but you could argue that the meaning of the federal meaning of qualified interpreter is very vague. Okay.
Right. Right.
So all the ASL community joined forces and they protested this bill. You heard Bill Rivers talking about it on the 17th.
June 17th. Yes.
Yeah. He said, oh, we have some reprieve because it got pushed back. But I had a very good source that the only thing that was going to happen was they were going to take out the ASL component and keep the oral languages. So on the 17th, in the dead of night, there was another bill, which is even more castrating. I have to use that word because I cannot think of another one. And it excludes ASL, but it includes oral languages. So the bill that was created that night, in the dead of night, that bill was presenting a couple of challenges. Well, the first one is that they are calling for the absolute 100% replacement of all human interpreters.
Oh.
In the former bill, there was a possibility with that and with a video remote, because they kept commingling everything. Because, we have to think that these legislators are not even bilingual, and yet they are making decisions on our profession whom they know nothing about.
This is very concerning because, just like I said earlier in the beginning, we interpreters and translators bring so much to the table. It's the human connection, it's the understanding of meanings within the specific context, more often than not, the nuanced cultural context. And in other settings, it's advocacy and the voice of the people we serve. It's the social justice. But unfortunately, those have all been meshed together and reduced to one simple aspect: cost. I know you have been very active in advocating for our profession. What are some of your takeaways in that effort so far? And maybe we can all learn a thing or two.
I don't think there's a guilty party, but definitely we need to do a much better job of reaching out to our legislators. We need to remember that these guys work for us, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So when we request, and I go to Washington, D.C. a couple of times a year, and I go lobbying for the language industry, for bilingual education, for whatever has to do with foreign languages, I will always be there. But it is very telling the way they take that information and what resonates with them. And it goes very well divided in political lines, from you have, for example, the Democrats. And again, I'm not vowing my support for one of the other, just explaining what I have seen and my colleagues have seen. So
Yeah.
if it's the Democrats, the discourse of social justice is what is going to push them. If you go talk to a Republican, you may mention some of that, but they are really concerned about the cost.
Yeah.
So we have been trying to reach out to these legislators in Wisconsin, trying to explain to them that something like this will result in an incredible number of malpractice lawsuits. There's going to be a lot of mistrials, right? That is money. That is money from us, the taxpayers, which is spent in a non-fiscally responsible way.
Right, right.
So that's what we're trying to attack.
That's a good approach. Differentiate the advocacy discourse, speak their language. Right. So, where is the bill now in the legislative process?
Now, the difference between the bill that contained American Sign Language and this bill is that this bill is still looking for co-sponsors.
I see.
So it is a sort of a draft, but they still haven't had the co-sponsors. So we are fighting against this bill, and we are doing it with the help of NAJIT. So it's ATA, NAJIT, and ACLU, Wisconsin.
That's very
So
nice.
yes, for they are actually very good because they are all attorneys. So we are working with them. And as a matter of fact, the people from ACLU were the ones who, in the dead of night, sent me that before even it was, morning. And I was like desperate because the night before, Bill was telling people,
That's
we have
right.
about a year, but let's keep fighting. And I said, Bill, please read this horrific thing that I just received. And
Oh
he was
my.
like, oh my God, it didn't take them long. But we knew it was coming. We
Yeah.
just never envisioned that it was going to come this quick. It is very frustrating. It is
Yeah.
extremely frustrating. But I do think the hope that we have in Wisconsin is that if this bill finds co-sponsors
Mm.
and goes to the legislature, what's going to happen is, provided that every Democrat votes no, the governor can veto that bill.
Okay. I see.
That would be our saving grace.
Mm.
But we don't
Right.
know. But depriving of someone of the right to understand legal proceedings or anything else, it is quite serious.
In the proposed bill, it gives the discretion to the defendant to use AI interpretation or not. To many, this may sound like a reasonable thing if the people involved in the lawsuit can choose. What's your take on that?
You have somebody who has committed a crime, who doesn't understand, and I'm not justifying anything. I'm just, trying to be very objective.
Yes.
You have somebody who is in a court of law with a legal system that is for sure very different than any other country in the world.
Yep.
Okay. And with a judge who is intimidating because you walk the judges up, it's intimidating for somebody who doesn't understand. I interpret in the courtroom. I know, I see people shaking and they don't know the consequences of what they did. What can the consequences be? So now, on top of that burden, you're telling them, should we wait for an interpreter or do you want to use the machine? And with a judge who is not very sympathetic to interpreters, he may make that call and say, well, for the sake of timeliness, let's just use the machine. And if
Yeah.
somebody shows up, it shows up. You cannot do that because that is not providing justice to a person. According to the Constitution, you have the right to a number of things, whether you are, there's no reference if you are legal, illegal, non-resident, resident. I mean, you could be a tourist from Italy and live in a palazzo in Italy. And if you are, something happens to you in the United States, you want an interpreter in the court,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
So it has nothing to do, you see, it has nothing to do with your legal status within the country.
Yeah.
And I think that some legislators are confusing that. They are
Yeah.
thinking that we're spending too much money on illegals, and they tell you this to your face.
Speaking of spending too much money, I can see where that argument came from to play the devil's advocate here. The courts and eventually the lawmakers have heard it maybe too many times that there isn't a local interpreter available for in person service, and an out of state interpreter has to be flown in at a huge cost just for a hearing that lasts less than 30 minutes. Perhaps they are equally frustrated and wanted to take care of this problem for once and for all by looking into other possibilities. And now AI is the perfect candidate. But on the flip side, I remember during Bill's webinar about this proposed bill, AB 292, an in state interpreter who was in attendance said in the chat message that she rarely got calls for court assignments when her out of state colleagues were getting flown in all the time for assignments that are within driving distance from her. I remember earlier you mentioned that there isn't a guilty party here. We, interpreters and translators, aren't being targeted by the bill. I feel that way. I think at most we are the collateral damage, maybe. I believe this bill really aims to solve an issue of not having interpreters available and or too expensive. But at the same time, we are in the field. We know that there are enough interpreters, or at least better alternatives to keep things in check, and it doesn't have to come at the cost of social justice. And this sounds more like an issue of they don't know where to look to find us. So instead, they simply believe that there aren't enough of us. That's where I think we can all come in to advocate for this job that we all love so dearly, to tell them that isn't the case.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's exactly right. And, you know, uh, there are ways of doing things, but the same way you wouldn't deprive a defendant from being represented by an attorney,
Yep, yep.
the same way the interpreter goes attached to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to create an elevator speech
Yep.
because when you see them, they are not going to read an article that was written by I don't know who. I have 3 bullet points when I talk to them. The first one is the cost and
Mm-hmm.
the increasing of malpractice lawsuits,
Yep.
mistrials, and all that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is the lack of empathy from the
Mm-hmm.
machine. So the machine being non-sentient, I do know that if I ever end up in China and I don't have the luck that you are with me, Jessie,
Mm-hmm.
I want a human who is
Yeah.
prepared to
Yeah.
interpret for me.
Yeah.
I don't want a machine. I want someone telling me, oh, hey, you have a bad cold. You need to take this antibiotic 3 times a day. Oh, isn't it 30? No, 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 3.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Yeah.
So it is very important. And this is going to spill to other states if this goes through. And they will still try to do something about it. So I'm not envisioning that this will stop. This will continue and will come back with a vengeance, I can tell you.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so essential for us to get ready and have that ready at our fingertips. And then it's so important that we need to pull our resources, our strength together to fight this. This is a great cause that we're trying to defend, which is
Yes,
people's
yes,
rights. They need to have language
yes.
access. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Christina, for that
My
very
pleasure, my dear.
insightful information so that we know what we need to do and how important it is. Because a lot of us may not have even heard of this. And even if we have
Sure.
heard, maybe this is just on the surface, but having this in-depth analysis and how you help us spell things out, this is really helpful because you're right. If this goes forward in Wisconsin, this sets a precedent and all the other states will follow. It's just a matter of time. So,
Correct.
well, thank you so much, Christina. I look forward to seeing you in Boston.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Jessie.